So despite dealing with several setbacks, including disqualifications and injuries, the Jamaicans dominated the medal table once again at the CARIFTA Games, winning 40 gold, 22 silver and 16 bronze at the 50th CARIFTA Games. It is the 37th consecutive year that the Jamaicans have ended the CARIFTA Games at the top of the medal table. The Bahamas finishing second with a total of 46 medals, including 10 gold. Trinidad and Tobago securing 9 gold among 25 medals to finish third. The medal table featuring 21 countries with at least one medal: Haiti, French Guiana and Curacao finishing with the smallest medal haul of 2 bronze medals each. Now, at the end of the proceedings, Jamaican Rashawn Clark was declared winner of the prestigious Austin Seeley Award. Rashawn Clark won the 400-meter hurdles and was deemed the most outstanding performer at the meet with a sub-50 clocking in the event. And that was in the under-20 category. 49.92 seconds his winning time. And he was also a part of the under-20 men's winning 4x400 meter relay team that closed the championship. Now, Technical Director of Jamaica's team, David Riley, joins us now via Zoom to talk about what happened over the weekend. David, we know that there were major disappointments for the Jamaican team, starting from day one with Bawaji Nkrumah and his hamstring grade 1 tear, and other events that provided some sort of a setback to the Jamaican objectives. But all things considered, satisfied with the medal haul and the 3 days of work in Nassau?
Satisfied when you consider, heavy champs the week before and the workload of these athletes coming into CARIFTA. It was just a matter of, fingers crossed that everything would go well. But of course, we're happy for how the athletes performed and their willingness to do the duties which were given to them.
Yeah, we know that the 92 medals from last year at home in Kingston was phenomenal, never before seen in the history of the CARIFTA Games. This one a little tougher. And as you mentioned, a lot of the athletes coming straight from the high school boys and girls championships the week before that. But how do you assess the level of competition that they faced? Because the rest of the Caribbean themselves, having a lot of outstanding athletes, would have come trying to eat into the Jamaican dominance. And in some events, they registered very solid performances. How do you assess the level of competition at the CARIFTA Games, given what you had seen before?
It's about the same. I mean, we've always had more intense competition in some events than others, and usually with a very high-quality Jamaican team, you would see a lot more 1-2s in events, and we'd see, a lot more of those in the sprints. We didn't have many, those finishes in the sprints, and so it would reflect in our medal tally. But it was pretty much about the same. I mean, the jumps have always been competitive across the region, the multi-events and the throws. We've always had to really fight to get medals there. So it's pretty much the same.
David, before we get on to what the other stuff that happened on the track, I just want to address the elephant in the room in terms of you having to work a lot behind the scenes. And I know that you have one of the brightest minds in track and field, and you had to work hard behind the scenes in a couple of instances. And I'm talking about what happened in the 4x1s, in particular when Jamaica had to launch a protest after Barbados got involved, saying that they wanted the race to be null and void. But in the end, it didn't turn out in favor of them for the race to be null and void, and it was said that the race should have been rerun in the following day in the afternoon. Tell me your thoughts on the process behind the scenes. What had to be done there when the protest came from Barbados?
Well, Barbados didn't ask for the event to be declared null and void. Barbados was of the opinion that Bahamas was given an unfair advantage by the Bahamian athlete not starting while the other athlete started, and everybody pretty much ran up to 80 meters. And so they felt that there should be, that the Bahamian should be disqualified. So they were not really trying to get a rerun, and that's why they didn't show up for the rerun, because they were not interested. We were of the opinion that there was no need for us to run the race over, because the jury who handed down the rule and did not declare the results null and void. And once the results are not declared null and void, then we didn't have to run the race over. That's our interpretation of the rules, and the other teams were of the same opinion, and it was just no rerun.
What was the fuss about then? I'm trying to wrap my mind about the fuss of them having to make the decision of rerunning the race, the officials, I mean.
The fuss was that the Bahamian team, persons felt the Bahamian team should have been disqualified. It was particularly unsettling that the jury, in their deliberation, did not have access to a video of the event. Somehow the video just disappeared, and they were only able to view something on YouTube, which is why their written response was that the unofficial video could not confirm. But it was a bit sloppy that the only race that was not recorded for the purpose of officiating was that particular race.
How strange was that?
Extremely strange, especially when you consider all the other things that we had to be dealing with. We thought that was particularly strange. We had actually made a request in writing, not a protest, but we made a formal request in writing to see the report from the false start information system for the semifinals, for that DeAndre Daly was given a false start. And CARIFTA Games has ended, and we've not received that. Yet they were able to produce it very fast for Bahamas to make their protest, for the 110-meter hurdles. And we just found it very strange that some of those operational things seem to be working only for the host team and not for all the teams that are participating.
You just referenced among the host of other things that you would have had to deal with. You mentioned one other. Maybe a couple more you could talk to us about? There are lots of, the sport allows for verbal protests to be made. It doesn't have to be written. And so you make a verbal protest to the referee, and then they can proceed based on that particular protest. So we had quite a few of those. I mean, I don't want to make it seem as though we're protesting every time, but we just believe that the information that the Bahamian team had access to is not the same information that everybody else had access to. And I think that's a little bit not what the sport is about. We need to be fair in terms of who has what, so that the best result is obtained and not necessarily the best result for you. And I think that's the really concern that most of the delegations had. I mean, the issues were not with the Jamaican team. The issues were right across the board. You mentioned in the earlier segment the St. Kitts
tournament on the 17 St. Kitts. I mean, the athlete actually reported to the call room and was denied access. And therefore, he was not allowed to run because his name was not on the start list. So, the events as outlined by Mr. Charlton is not really what happened. He actually showed up. And it was not until they protested that they realized that the athlete was denied the opportunity to run, and therefore they had to allow him to run by himself.
Yeah, well, David Charlton, just a few minutes ago in the previous segment, David Riley, two Davids dealing with here in the CARIFTA Games segments, suggested that the sort of interaction that he had widespread with the rest of the teams was very good, generally. Well, you just said something 2 minutes ago that would suggest that that wasn't quite so.
Yeah, we don't have any issues with Mr. Charlton and his team in terms of organization.
Yes.
We had issues with the officiating and the rules, or the rulings that came from the jury, and those are outside of his remit. I mean, yes. He doesn't control those. So in terms of him facilitating us, writing our protests and our appeals, we had no issues there. We had no issues with the TIC and how they operated. We had issues with the other aspects of the the meet in terms of how the meet was being contested, pushing back of races, pushing races forward, requiring athletes to show up earlier than they should, which would put our athletes at risk because they would not have completed the warm-up. I mean, we had to put on our foot and say, our athletes aren't going to report early. You can't change the schedule and tell us 5 minutes before that, no, they must show up. No, we don't operate like that. We are accustomed to an organized event, scheduled, and we structure our warm-ups based on those schedules, and we report based on the times that you said. But we can't change it midstream. We're not a team like that. We have elite juniors, and we have to protect them.
How did the athletes feel? How did the athletes feel in the aftermath of these things happening to them? Because even at the end, we're told that they weren't even able to enjoy the victory of another CARIFTA Games. How did they feel?
Well, the athletes are a bit turned off from some of the events. Some of them were based on not necessarily officials, but based on just the general feelings that they experienced from some of the other athletes and some of the spectators. And I mean, our athletes have to learn to accept the reality that, you're not going to get a welcome mat everywhere you go. And your rivals and people you're competing against don't necessarily have to show you, a lot of love. And you just have to compete in that kind of environment. And that's something that they have to also face. Maybe they're not accustomed to that, but that's the reality of how you compete.
But the Bahamians, David, have been for a long time Jamaica's biggest rivals at the CARIFTA Games level. And the fans, everyone would have been pumped up for this meet here. And it seemed quite repetitive that a lot of the Jamaicans who won, when they were interviewed post-race, they referenced silencing the crowd, as if the Bahamian atmosphere sort of provoked them into top quality performances. Was that how you saw it as technical director of the Jamaica setup?
Yeah, the athletes were provoked based on the response when Bouaji went down. I think there were instances where persons were cheering when the athlete went down, and the athletes were a bit, disappointed, and they, it took them a while to recover from that experience. So I would think that it came from that.
So you're saying on day one, when Bouaji Nkrumah, after his 9.99 clocking at the high school championships in Jamaica the week before, went down injured, the Bahamian fans cheered?
Fans, athletes, the athletes were watching the race in the hotel lobby, and a very disappointing response from the Bahamian team in the hotel.
All right, Adisha Hodge suffered an ankle injury and didn't compete at the games. One of the big clashes that everyone anticipated would be her showdown with Alana Reid, the Jamaican sprint star. How disappointing was it that this BVI sensation didn't actually compete in Nassau?
Disappointing because, we cheered her on in Kingston because she was just, the best of the lot, and we couldn't match her. But we had, persons who were high quality to match her at the under 20, and we were looking forward to that. Because it's all about the race, and you want to race against the best. You want to win an event where the best competing. And so it was a bit disappointing that she was unable to face the startup.
David Riley, Technical Director of the Jamaican contingent at the CARIFTA Games. Thanks for talking to us. An eventful CARIFTA Games, but as usual, world class and really, really exciting action coming from Nassau. Not all of it pretty, but as sports fans and sports journalists, we embrace everything that sports has to offer. Thanks, David. We'll talk again soon, I'm sure.
My pleasure.
Okay, back with more on the SportsMax Zone after this.
Stay with SportsMax on YouTube and follow us on all social pages for updates, news, and entertainment.